Hello everyone, hope you're all having a wonderful day. And today we're going to be having a look once again at a Dutch tech tree. Last time we went through the aviation parts that the Dutch have to offer, and this time we're probably looking at what their main focus would be if it ever came to War Thunder. Yes, it's the naval stuff, and of course they have a very full tech tree, and it's going to be really fun going through all of the different ranks. But before we do that, I think we'll start off with some words from Cacti about the tech tree as well, and also some honorable mentions, and then we'll move on to Soldier if he has any words to say as well. So Cacti, set us off. What is the key parts of this tech tree, and why is this the part of, I suppose, the Dutch that we should really focus on if it ever comes to War Thunder?
So yeah, like you said, the Dutch naval tech tree is the most fleshed out one. There are foreign vehicles in here, but if you remove them all, the tech tree would still completely work. All of these vehicles are Dutch, and they were used by us. And well, if we would like us to look at the World War II side of things, the navy was the strongest part of the Netherlands. You can even trace it back to the old spice trade memes, all that stuff. Like our navy was a force to be reckoned with, and even during World War II, although there were other superpowers around, we were still very much capable on the seas. Also, when you look at the Netherlands, you also got to keep in mind the East Indies, so Indonesia, Japan, that area. Like our navy was very active over there as well. It was not just a European conflict.
And how about you, Soldier? When you look at this tech tree, how does it speak to you? Do you see it as this international conglomerate, as Cacti said? And also, how about some information about what's in the top right of the screen, and making sure that people understand kind of the parameters of what they're looking at when looking at the tech tree?
Yeah, Super Cacti pretty much hit the nail on the head. Like, the Dutch have always been on like two fronts at once. We fought against Japan, and we fought against, well, Germany. So you have also kind of uh, two different designs, so to speak. Like, you have boats specifically designed for the North Sea, basically, and you have boats specifically designed for more, well, warm water, more shallow water, where at the islands of Java and stuff. So there's two completely different uh, things you could see basically. On the top right, we have like a small little uh, information on like what certain markings and certain colors mean. So the first of all, you have flags. So the first flag you can see is like a foreign vehicle that's almost identical to the Ford model. Basically meaning we bought it uh, or we license built it, but we didn't really change it up. We just straight up took it as it was. Right next to it, you have a foreign vehicle that was modified by us. So this means that, well, the vehicle was either some like license built or bought, but it is different from the base model. So it has its unique twists to it to make it a little bit more spicy. And on the right, you have, well, a Dutch vehicle. So it was designed by us, built by us, tested, etc. It's just completely Dutch. There's no foreign influence basically there. Then there's also the colors. The first color you can see is yellow. There's one ship in this tech tree that has this color, which means it was built as a mock-up or prototype was under construction. For ships, that's a bit different. You don't really have ship prototypes, but it kind of flows the same way. You just have something that's under construction, uh, as but not finished basically. You have orange. We don't have an orange vehicle right now in the tech tree, but maybe in the future. Which means it's a slightly different version of an existing vehicle. But that production version or that version specifically wasn't built, but the base model, for example, was. So that's kind of a bit of an in-between. And red obviously means it only existed on paper or blueprint. Currently, there are no vehicles in the tech tree that are red, but they could very well come to the tree. We know of some designs that could make it. And the thing with naval forces in general, like boats and ships, is that they were planned like before building, they were like completely planned. So for Naval, it's a bit easier to add blueprint vehicles. But yeah, so far we don't have any, so we're not gonna touch too much upon those. So yeah, that's basically how this tech tree works.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And it is nice. I saw a few comments when it came to a lot of foreign-born stuff, I suppose, from the aviation point of view. From the naval point of view, as you can see, at least from some of the flags, glancing at them, that isn't, the full case here. On top of this, before we want to get into the tech tree itself, I just want to thank a few people who also helped with the tech tree on top of, obviously, Super Cacti and Soldier 676. You have Captain Versteeg, then you got Block High, Pytor, Cheesy Muffin, and also Private Woke. So thank you all for contributing to this fan-made independent Naval Forces tech tree. It is, at least from me, it's a wonderful achievement to put these stuff together, so we can broaden the knowledge that people have when it comes to these really interesting vehicles. As usual, when it comes to the tech tree, we're going to split it into ranks. So in this video, we're tackling rank 1, and then in the subsequent videos, we will do one rank at a time, meaning that eventually we'll end up with quite a few videos, but I think they'll all be worth it. Let's get started with the first vehicle, the Reserve, and we're going to move from left to right, and that is the TM4. So start us off, Cacti. What is this machine, and why is it picked for the Reserve?
So let's get this out of the way quickly. This would honestly be the worst reserve boat you could possibly get in the entire game. And why would it be so bad? Well, it is armed with 2 30 cal Lewis machine guns. That is one single mount with dual guns, and then it would have 2 17.7 inch torpedo tubes. So when it comes to effectiveness, this thing would not be good at all. But then again, it's a fun little starter boat. It's very small, it's very nippy, it gets around the place. And if you look at the historical part of things, most of these small motor torpedo boats were used in the East Indies. And some of them actually ended up in Japanese hands or were later retrofitted with things like their 25mm guns. But that's not part of the Dutch tech tree, of course. But yeah, the TM4, not the best starter boat, I suppose. But the one that comes after the TM22 is already a huge step up.
Yeah, the fact is, when it comes to reserve boats, it is supposed to be something just to start off the tech tree, and it doesn't have to be anything special. I mean, I had a very interesting time starting off the Japanese naval tech tree with their starters, so I don't think, it would be any different here. Moving on to the next vehicle, the TM22. What can you tell us about this machine's soldier?
So, the flag doesn't do this machine complete justice, but it is in a way completely Dutch. So it wasn't designed by a Dutchman. It was designed by like Canadian or an American, and it was built by a Canadian or American company, depending on which vehicle of the class you're referring to. But it was completely made for us. Like it wasn't, as far as we know at least, it wasn't used by any other nation. So that's what makes it Dutch. So we're looking at a machine that was built around like 1942. But the since Java and stuff, that all collapsed basically. So these went to the West Indies instead, like the islands of Curacao, for example. So this was meant, well, a motor torpedo boat, obviously, or torpedo boats, or however you want to call it. It was armed with like 2 double 50 cal mounts. So you have this turret with 2 50 cals in it, and you have 2 of those turrets. It has 4 single launchers of 45 centimeters or 18-inch torpedoes. The source states that these were never actually in the tubes, but since you have the tubes, it's completely, well, not far-fetched to think that they are in there, basically. It has 3 engines and goes like 44 knots. So it's this pretty cool, torpedo boat that was actually kind of meant to also fight against submarines. So you would probably also find some depth charges on it.
Yeah, it's always nice looking at these early tier vehicles because they should at least give a little bit of a spice of life to everything that the tech tree has to offer. And with, guns, torpedoes, and depth charges, and all of these wonderful things when it comes to these vehicles, it's nice to see that there's a little bit of representation of everything. Moving on to the next vehicle, we have the TM51 class. Now, how does this differ from the TM22 Cacti?
So how this vehicle differs is, overall this boat is a bit bigger and a bit more powerful. So instead of it having 450 cals, the TM51 class of boats have two 20mm Hispanos. And on top of that, the torpedoes have four 17-inch torpedo tubes. But something interesting about this boat specifically, the TM51, it is of course the TM51 class, but this specific boat, the 51, had one extra 20mm added at some point. We don't know exactly where it is mounted, but it is interesting to have this slightly different version of the standard class. So this one will be armed with 3 20mm, and then of course the 4 torpedoes. And also, like Soldier touched upon, most of these small boats were not really built by us. So we didn't really have the infrastructure sometimes to make these ships. So we would basically contract Britain or Canada or anybody who was available to build these ships for us. But in the end, they're still Dutch ships, if you ask me.
Oh yeah, I mean subcontracting is definitely, a thing when it comes to history and even to the modern day. So I don't think anyone would hold it against the Dutch. If it's, Dutch designed and Dutch used, then of course we would see it as a Dutch vehicle. The next one is the first premium of the tree, and this sits itself at 1.0, so still a starter BR, and it is the RP112. So what is this vehicle, Soldier? At least from the picture, it looks very much interesting.
Yeah, so this one has RP obviously in the name, which means Regionaal Patrouillevaartuig, which means it's like patrol. So it's a patrol boat. So after the Second World War, obviously we still had the Dutch East Indies for a while until they got their independence. And around the time, we obviously had boats that were just meant to guard, basically to peacekeep. It depends on how you would describe peacekeeping, but that's from our point of view, it was peacekeeping. So this one is one of those. So it's more of a sort of police machine in a way. It was armed with one 20mm, presumably an autogun, and one machine gun, which I don't know the exact type of. So yeah, it's just this really cool patrol boat. The name of the actual ship itself, like this specific 112, is the Wezel, which is like the weasel. And there are quite a lot of other RP boats which we could add into the tree, but we don't really know where to put it. So, but this is one of those that we thought, well, let's put it in as a 1.0.
Makes sense, and even though it definitely is different to the rest, you want your premiums to sometimes be a little bit wacky and a little bit wonderful, and I do like the fact that you threw in the peacekeeping thing. As a British man, there is definitely a divide when it comes to what people see as the British peacekeeping and the British actions when it comes to certain countries, and I'm sure it's exactly the same for the Dutch. Moving on to the first event vehicle of the tree, we've got the Thor. And the Thor, well, let's just say it's a bit of a behemoth when we look at the first line of these vehicles. Tell us about this monstrosity of a vehicle, Cacti.
So the name does do the ship justice. This thing is, if it were to fire its gun, it will make one crazy roar over the battlefield. So people should, well, I think people are familiar with the British Monitor class ships, where you have something the size of a destroyer armed with a gun of a battleship. This is basically that, only just tone it down a class. Here we have a patrol boat that has the gun of a destroyer. This ship, the Thor, I'll probably butcher that name, has a single 150mm gun. It is not exactly specified which one, but looking at the guns we had at our disposal around that time, it's most likely one of the German Krupp guns. Also, something to point out, if this boat were to be added into the game, it will be the oldest vehicle in the entire game. These ships were laid down in 1877, which makes them crazy old. And also, they were used during World War II, which makes them one of the oldest ships the Dutch used during the Second World War. But these boats were basically used to just patrol around rivers and calm waters, and they would just use their crazy weapons to just butcher anything they come across. If you look at the other ships of this class, they carried, well, crazy amount of guns. For example, one of them had a single 120mm, two 37s, and a single 50 cal. But then other ones had 3 37s and 2 50 cals. The guns were just not consistent on all of these ships. They all had something different. And well, to make this one an event vehicle, just to have something crazy about it, we thought, let's go for the single 150mm gun version.
Yeah, go big or go home is definitely something that will entice people to get it as an event vehicle. Moving on to the second line, we start off in the Ships 2 category, I suppose, which is the MTB202. So what is the deal with this vehicle, Soldier? It definitely gives me vibes of the good old Brit bongers.
Yeah, so these are Vosper, which obviously we already have some Vosper ships in the game. This is just another one of those Vosper ships. This one specifically was called the Kempa, which I don't know the English word for. It's another animal. It has one 20mm, one double mount 50 caliber, two single .303, and two 21-inch or 53 centimeter torpedoes. So we're looking at a pretty spicy boat in terms of armament with all those, machine guns, cannons, torpedoes. We are looking at like 33 to 40 knots. So yeah, it's this pretty cool motor torpedo boat.
There's definitely a few of those in the British tech tree which aren't really interesting. They have a nice mix of speed and firepower, and just the torpedoes on top of it gives you that nice little boost, especially in arcade. And to see some of them replicated in the Dutch tech tree in slightly different versions is wonderful to see. The next vehicle is the MTB222, so it looks very similar to the vehicle before it. What is the difference between these two vehicles, Cacti?
So the MTB222 is almost identical to the MTB202. What the 222 makes different is it has slightly more powerful engines, which result in a better top speed. But when it comes to torpedo armaments, it's the exact same, two single 21-inch tubes. But when it comes to the weaponry, the 202 had two double 30 cal MGs. But this one has one double 50 cal MG and just a single 20mm. So it loses a little bit of firepower, but in return you get a faster, more capable boat, if you ask me. But yeah, in the end, some people would see this as a downgrade, but it's just a slightly different variant of the 202 that came before.
Yeah, and then even though it's slightly similar, of course, you're going to have these vehicles in each tech tree, which is just a slight upgrade over the other one, but they're still welcome to see because it means that you can actually build lineups instead of just single vehicles and hoping that they can carry you to victory. The next vehicle is once again part of the MTB series. This one is the 418. So what is the large upgrade of this one over the 222 Soldier? Is it increased weaponry, increased engines again? What are we looking at?
Well, if you look at the front of the ship, this one has a bit more of a spicy gun on it. So this is one 40mm, one double 20mm, and then two double mounts .303. So in terms of armaments, this is quite an upgrade because the 40mm in Naval we have in the game are quite powerful. It also has two single 18-inch torpedoes. So in the big upgrade is definitely the weaponry, the guns, and we're also looking at around 40 knots. So yeah, it's just gain a bit more armament and slaughter them with your 40mm.
And for me, the 40mm is definitely one of the key, areas of weaponry when it comes to naval. I've had a lot of fun with it in stuff like the Dark class machines from the British. And also, with the Eugen talked about, with all of its bofers, I'm sure it will be a hot topic to come when it comes to the amount of, DACA it can put out. The next premium vehicle in our list is the Z5. Now, obviously, this looks different to all of the other PT boats, apart from, I suppose, the Thor, which isn't one. But what is this machine like, Cacti? Like, how does this differ? Is it a PT boat, or is it more of, a battle boat? What are we looking at here?
So I think you can compare these a little bit to the Schnellboats we have in Germany. Only think of them slightly slower, a bit more sluggish, and also way older. These ones were laid down around the 1915s. So they actually, little fun fact, they still run on coal. I don't know if you have a coal-powered ship in the game already, but just something fun. The Z5 is, of course, part of a Z class. There is another one in the main tech tree. But the thing that differs the Z5 from its other class of ships is it doesn't have torpedoes. So you have a boat that kind of resembles a fast torpedo boat, but it doesn't have the torpedoes. What it does have is two 75mm Bofors number 4 cannons. I'm not sure which Bofors they are, but they're listed as number 4s in our service. And two 50 cal machine guns. So in the end, it's not the best boat. You lose the torpedoes, which the other ones of the Z-class do have. But still, you have those nice weaponry for you to use. And that's honestly why it's a premium. It's not the best, and it lacks something rather important, so it was not really needed in the main tech tree.
For me, it definitely looks interesting. It's one of those vehicles which I'm definitely happy to see, just because of its general pedigree, and mainly because of its large guns. A lot of the times when you get these kind of, quite old machines, they do pretty well at lower tiers, because, well, you can kind of just screw around when it comes to derping other machines. There's something which, at least the Japanese tree at early ranks, it definitely struggles with. It has some vehicles which don't have great guns, but when the large caliber hits right, it does feel absolutely wonderful. The next line is started off by the Amal, I'm guessing is how you say that. There's going to be a few of these which I'm just not going to pronounce because I know I'll make a fool of myself and leave it to the two Dutch boys to get me through. So this is the first of, as I said, the second line, and it definitely looks from the picture to have an interesting way of getting itself about. So, Soldier, tell us about this machine.
Well, you were pretty close with the pronunciation of this one. It's the Amal. So, yeah, pretty cool. It's a British minesweeper. So, in the event that we get like full-on mine layers in game, basically, we obviously need something to counter it. So you would get, well, minesweepers. So this would be one of those, basically, a minesweeper to counter those. So this is a really old ship. You can kind of guess already by the looks of it. And it goes like 10 knots. So yeah, it's not that fast. But it does have armament. Like it does have one 20mm Oricon and two 12.7s. So it can still defend itself. But then again, we have in the British tree the Flores, I think it's called, and the other one, which are also like really slow. But because they're also pretty big, their survivability is pretty alright. So this would be one of those.
That's fair enough. It probably wouldn't fit too well in the current iteration of the tech tree. But then again, you've got to remember that, we are looking towards the future now when it comes to these machines. And, I think mines will become a part of War Thunder in hopefully the near future. And therefore, machines like that will be a little bit more useful. The next one is a very long boat, it seems, or at least looks like compared to the rest, 126 feet class. They're definitely not messing around with the class name. What is the name of this machine, Cacti, and how interesting is it?
So when it comes to the name of the ship, I'm actually not too sure, because a T followed up by an H is not very common in Dutch. But I suppose it's pronounced Tolen or Tolen, something along those lines. Maybe I even butchered it. Now I'm Dutch myself. But the 127 feet class is an enlarged version of the 105 feet class, the one that came before. So this is still a minesweeper. So it's slow. It's yeah, it's not going to be the best in game. But something to point out about these minesweepers, they were made out of wood, because of course certain anti-ship mines are magnetic. So when something of steel construction, or is it steel? Maybe it's iron. I'm not too sure. But when it comes across these mines would attach to it and then just blow the whole ship up. So these minesweepers are made out of wood, which I don't know if we have other ships made out of wood in game. We most likely do, but it's just something interesting. But this being a enlarged version of the previous 105 feet class, this one is armed with two 20mm cannons, two 50 cals, and two 30 cals. Still, it's nothing to really write home about, but yeah, it's an interesting ship.
And now we're moving on to the next vehicle, which is our first, I suppose, named vehicle after somebody, maybe? Who knows? We're going to find out in a few seconds. But this one actually looks, to me, like the first, I suppose, proper ship instead of a boat that we're going to see. Tell us the story of Jan here, soldier. What is it all about?
So the Dutch did like to name their ships after a lot of people. I'm not too sure on all of them. Like I know a few of those, well, sea heroes, if you want to call them that. So I don't know what who Jan van Gelder is, but this ship itself is a Jan van Amstel class minesweeper. So basically this line is just, well, minesweeping basically. So it's kind of to in these obviously we will probably get mine layers, so you have something to counter that, which probably every nation has. So the Dutch obviously have their minesweepers. So this one would be armed with like one 20-pounder cannon, four 20mm orcans. It actually has 14 mines, so it can kind of sweep and lay, I think. Might be wrong about that, but and it goes like 50 knots, so it's this other, well, minesweeper to go about the place and make everything clean.
Make sure that the seas are okay for trade and also okay for military vehicles. The next one we have a look at is the Z3. Now, obviously, in the last line, we were having a look at the Z5. And the question is, of course, Cacti, is what is the difference between these two vehicles? And also, why is this one picked as the standard tech tree with the Z5 being the premium?
So the Z3 is slightly larger than the Z5. It's also much more heavier, but also the crew is also larger on this ship. When it comes to overall performance or just seaworthiness, it's almost identical to the Z5. But like I mentioned in the Z5, it lacked torpedoes, but this one, the Z3, does not. This has four 450mm torpedoes. I believe that's 17-inch. But when it comes to weaponry, it still has the same as the Z5, so that's two 75mm Bofors and two 50 cals. But the reason why this one is in the main tech tree is because it's a larger, more powerful version of the one we have in the premium. So again, having torpedoes is a whole lot more useful. And overall, in this lineup, like Soldier said, we have a lot of minesweepers. I thought it would be nice to sort of finish it up with a little bit of a hidden gem, I suppose. It's a very good ship if you combine the torpedoes along with the good amount of guns.
Yeah, I definitely think when it comes to the way that at least the naval tech trees work, you do need the carrot on the stick at the end of the line to make sure that people research the whole lines instead of just moving on to the rank 2. And the Z3 can definitely offer that to many individuals. The last vehicle we're going to be looking at is in rank 1 once again, and it is, well, the last rank 1 vehicle, labeled as a pre-order bundle vehicle, which is always interesting to see. So, Soldier, I'm going to butcher this name, so I'll leave it up to you. And also, give us some thoughts on the vehicle, and on top of it as well, why would you guys pick this vehicle as the pre-order bundle 1?
There has been a meme floating around the internet of a ship that is camouflaged as an island. And many people do not know that it was a Dutch ship. And then you also have to know that it's this ship. So this ship was actually camouflaged as an island near the area of Australia because there were Japanese ships in the area. So instead of like fleeing or battling, which was obviously suicide, this ship decided to camouflage itself as an island. So it took branches, leaves, etc., and it basically became the island. It actually survived the war because of that, and you can still visit it today. It's a museum ship. So this is pretty unique vehicle. There are not a lot of vehicles that camouflage themselves and survive the war and are also museum ships. So that's kind of the reason, like the history portion and stuff like that, to make it like extremely special, make it like a pre-order bundle. It is a Jan van Amstel class, which means it's pretty much the same as the Jan van Gelder. So it's definitely this interesting pre-order bundle, like the lower tier one, in terms of general history. It lays in Den Helder, which you can still visit, as I called that. There's a naval museum, if you want to call that, marine museum, and well, this is one of their museum ships, besides a submarine. So yeah, it's pretty interesting one at that.
Something I'd like to add to it, aside from just the trees and the branches they added onto the ship, they also repainted the hull to resemble more of a rock shape. So when you look at this ship in game, I don't think trees and branches on the ship would really work, but maybe it could still retain that camouflage. It makes it look like rocks.
And just before we finish, so Soldier, give us a reading of the name in full, just in case anybody missed it.
It's the Abraham Krijnse.
So there you go. That is the rank 1 of the Dutch tech tree, all well and done. And as you can see, there is a really nice mix here of some wonderful little PT boats and also some things which I suppose are kind of like battle boats, but much more designed for obviously the minesweeping role. For me, there is obviously some great gems in here with the Thor and also some 40mm MTBs. Everything just looks absolutely wonderful, and as somebody who really enjoys the earlier tiers of ships compared to the later ones, it does get me hyped to have a look at this, part of tech trees. As always, through these videos, thank you to Super Cacti and also Soldier676 for going through these with me. I hope you have all enjoyed this video, and we'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Ambrosius McClellan, B. Young, Blackie, Daniel Stanton, Jay Wilt, John Ryman, Joseph Anders, Martinez, Moxie, Super Cacti, Uyans Terry, Elove Goat, and Seductive Trashcan for supporting the channel.